And we're back. Welcome to American Zarathustra for another episode of Critical Race Theory is Anti-White. So I'm very, very happy to have back with us, my friends, the dude, Daniel Kincannon. How are you, Daniel?
Very well, very well.
Awesome. And the mighty Brant Danger. How are you, sir?
I'm splendid, thank you.
Brilliant. So, wow, a lot has transpired since the last show, and these shows are not regular shows. They just, we do them when there's stuff to do, when there's stuff to respond to, and unfortunately, there's always a waterfalls of anti-white narrative and media pouring out against us day in and day out. But there's some specific things that we're going to cover today, and the first of the topics is this question: is the Overton window moving? We, in the past week or so, we've seen that Tucker Carlson has used words like the Great Replacement and anti-white. Surprise of all surprises, Charlie Kirk even mentioned that. He brought that up, and I have to say I was pretty impressed by that. I kind of always thought of him as a bit of a gatekeeper, and for him to now actually acknowledge the anti-white system and the Great Replacement it's a pretty big white pill, I would say. So Alex Jones, he's been fairly plugged in for a while now, but it's good to see. He has a lot of influence, and people like Jack Posobiec, it's just starting to mainstream more. I'm even seeing, do a little screen share, that smaller news sources are kind of integrating this into their terminology as well. Let's see if I think it's this one here. Oh no, that's the Tucker one. We'll get to that in a moment. But well, suffice to say, the other news stations are doing, and that's kind of how it goes, right? You have the big news outlets that take the lead, and then all the smaller ones get the trickle down news, and they use the language. So what do you think, gentlemen? Brent, what's your take on this whole thing? Do you feel that our movement is getting more momentum and that we're kind of mainstreaming?
Well, I think the short answer is the Overton window isn't sliding. It's just getting bigger like this. So we're gaining momentum, and our victimizers, the anti-whites, are gaining momentum at the same time. And I think that that's just going to continue to a wonderful crescendo. How that will come to a climax, I don't know.
Wow, that is an interesting way to look at it. And how about you, Daniel? What's your take on this?
To me, it's a mixed bag. It's good in the sense that if people get to hear that message that otherwise aren't going to hear the message, obviously that's good. But the question kind of stands in my mind: where have you been for the last 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, when you knew damn well it was going on, but you weren't talking about it? And so it's certainly nothing I'm going to counter signal, but I think and depending on the players, I think some people do it because they're left no choice, because they know their audience will move on from them if they don't, because it rises from the bottom up. The truth comes from the bottom. It rises up, and at some point, the gatekeepers have to nudge the gate a little bit, maybe once in a while. But I don't think it's cause for celebration. I think it's cause to turn the heat on our own behalf even harder, because more people need to say these things, and more people need to feel the fire.
Well done. Well done. No one person can have a complete sort of bead on the entire internet and like how is everything changing. There probably are algorithms you could study and the like, but one would, as far as my friends, my normie friends, the variety of social media platforms that I'm looking over, I've come to feel that CRT, this CRT's anti-white project, if you will, is gaining rapid momentum. So why I say that is because it's not so much the things like, Tucker Carlson or these things, but rather all the reaction to it. So, all it takes is a few people without white guilt to speak the truth. And then that pinprick opens up the floodgates. People come forth and, they recognize that whites are targeted for extinction. Critical race theory is one way of doing it. But, this particular way is going after our children. Well, whites are civilized, polite people, and, we don't want to offend others and da-da-da. You go after our children, though, and you're gonna see some wrath. You're gonna see some pushback like you don't want, So I think they stepped on the wrong kind of landmine there with that. So in my estimation, this is what I'm seeing, is that there's just such a painful cry out by just normies who want to express this stuff and they don't know how to. They have to find leaders, people like us and people like, say, Jason Kuna, or anybody in the white positive sphere who's producing white positive material, white identitarian material, what have you. These are the people that we have to start pushing into their realm. It's very comfortable. I think it's almost in I don't like to say political echo chamber, but we are comfortable among ourselves and sharing understandings and, et cetera, media among ourselves. It really is just like Daniel said, it's time to push in. You've got to, hit the gas pedal and get our message out there. Now's the time. People are receptive to it. So it's, as far as I can tell, I think that this is really making an impact. So let's look at some media from this week here. We're going to have a look at our buddy Tucker Carlson dropping an F-bomb on a certain show. If Tucker can do it, we all can do it. So let's just take a little look. I think this is, I was pretty shocked when I heard this. So let's have a listen here. Let me make sure that volume's up.
Much blowback whatever you do. I mean, frankly, whatever you do, you get blowback. And today there's more blowback on whether you've been pushing for the great replacement theory. And you said that this is going to happen on your show last night. Sure enough, on cue, the ADL comes out and comes after you. And I wonder,
so I'm not on.
I know. I don't even want to be the one to tell you because you do a good job of avoiding it.
I didn't even know that. I mean, what?
They want you to be fired. They're pushing yet again for you to be fired, Tucker. It's constant. But you get so much blowback whenever.
So, wow, F them. I'm assuming this show is behind a paywall or something. I can't imagine that Fox News would play this. But, the Anti-White Defamation League has come out. And I don't know. To me, I think of that as just an extortion racket. It's an intimidation extortion racket. What do you guys think of Tucker's comments, Brent?
Well, Tucker's had pressure on him for quite a while, and as you talked about in your last question, how is the Overton window moving? I think it's moving in. It's opening up for both sides of this this argument. So he's getting frustrated. He's let his hair down a little bit. You can see his hair is down right there. He's not doing a show, so he feels a little bit freer to talk.
Sure.
And if you keep hounding someone over and over and over and over and over, you might get a reaction out of him. Mm-hmm. Now, how much of a true gatekeeper he is, it's kind of hard to tell right now. Mm-hmm. He's definitely in that category, but maybe he's slowly moving as he's accepting the larger reality. And even though he's been born into money, mm-hmm. I don't know if he's going to start speaking to what our concerns are or just the conservative concerns are. So it's nice to see this. And like Daniel says, the dude there, we got to keep pushing on this. Okay. Like if you're in a sports ball game, you see a weakness in your opponent. That's when you go after it. You go harder. Yeah. So anyway, this is nice. But once again, I got to sit back and watch and see what he does after this.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And how about you, dude? What's your take? What's the dude take?
Yeah, if there's one statement that anybody could make that you won't catch me counter signaling, that statement would be "fuck the ADL."
Well done.
Let's be honest. Yeah, they are what they are. They exist to libel white people.
Yeah,
that's all they do. They smear, they lie, they post phony statistics, they add fake, phony, libelous hate crimes into their stats. Mm-hmm. They publish this garbage. That's what they exist for. Everybody knows the racket. It's a farce on its face. The only thing I'll point out is it's funny. You even see Megan with a Y, Kelly there, when she's when she's posing that question to Tucker. She even does like the goofy voice for when she says the words, the great replacement. Like even she's doing the ooga booga booga. It's like you're talking to the guy who just made headlines for mentioning that theory, that reality. But like they're still programmed the same way they're programmed to do like Martin Luther King quotes if they want to talk about like in the defense of white people. She still has to do the ooga booga voice when she says the grit. Like, it's here, folks. Let's face it.
Yeah. It's I believe so she can pedal it back, if she has to apologize for saying that, whatever. This kind of like, I don't know what that's called. It's a sort of a sociological lens where people look around to say, well, is it okay? I'm taking my cue from my people around me as to what I can say or not, and I'll give you an example. Let's say I'm dating a girl and she says, okay, it's time to meet my girlfriend. And then I let her check you out and see what you think. And then I say, well, guess what? I'm not dating her. I'm dating you. And if she's the one that decides for you, then I'm not dating you either. Like you got to think for your damn self. You got to look at the data. And that is just kind of a funny analogy there. But it's really upsetting to me how people don't look at data at all, but rather what's the norm, what can be said and what cannot be said. And so it's people like us and our ilk that are out there pushing the Overton window, if you will, kind of like saying, no, it's okay it's okay to be white. It's okay to talk about this stuff.
I can't relate completely to what you're saying, only because I exclusively date trans women of color.
Right. That how progressive of you. You are
I try.
Community leader there, I'll tell you. All right. Well, so let's look at something else. Now, earlier this week, I believe Daniel posted something from Gab. It was a mother, I believe, that reached out to you. And let's have a peek at what she shared. Now, what she shared with Daniel, it actually, I would say that it backs up what I was saying before about how people. We'll get to that in a second. How people need they need to have somebody to go to. They need to have somebody to talk to about the crisis of like having their kids in the anti-white system. It's so frustrating for that. Maybe while I'm looking for the link here, Daniel, if you could speak a little bit to that experience. You're on mute there, buddy. Just to let you know. There you go.
There we go. Yeah, it's frightening. You'll see once Donald pulls it up. And now this is something like since I've gone public, I cannot tell you hundreds of once in a while you'll get them publicly posted like this, but hundreds of firsthand accounts from parents whose children have suffered underneath this madness and who have been taught to hate themselves. And it's not just CRT. We all know it's happening all across the culture, especially in the media.
Yeah.
But even if you can avoid all other things, when you send your child to school, and it's not just public schools, it's in private schools. I had someone mention to me lately, they had to pull their child out of a community homeschool because they were introducing DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion training for the home school community students.
Whoa.
So you can run, you can, wherever you go, this stuff is still coming to find you. It's still coming looking for you. And I'll hand it back over to you, Donald, so you can kind of present it there.
Right. So I'll simply read this here. So she's addressing Daniel. This is absolutely true. When my fourth grader came to me with tears in her eyes after a Zoom lesson this last January and told me that she felt bad for being white, I knew I had to do something. I pulled my 3 kids from public school and am homeschooling them. I also witnessed my kindergartner being read a book about boys wearing dresses, makeup, and jewelry. When several kids reacted with confusion, the teacher reiterated that their behavior was perfectly normal and completely okay. Zoom lessons opened my eyes. Parents, be an advocate for your kids. This isn't okay. do what you have to do to protect their well-being and mental health. They should not be subjected to this at school. So if you want to maybe respond to that, what was your reaction to her? What in general are the things that you say to people who reach out to you, Daniel?
Yeah, I have there was another mom who had a very similar a post on Gab as well, whose daughter, she had to pull her daughter out of public school. She came home in tears one day. She had been called racist at school for saying all lives matter. I think she was 9 years old.
Right.
And of course, we all know the power that word carries, especially when parents have not prepared their children to deal with frivolous nonsense accusations like that. And that's something that I always like to sound off about, is my own personal experience watching young boys, young white boys, come through the door of my office beside themselves, losing their minds because some non-event happens. You know, they wouldn't give somebody a bite of their snack. They were called a racist. And now they go into borderline psychosis because they're so fearful. They were just called the worst thing they could ever be called. I think the big thing to me for parents to do, the way for parents to react, first of all, you have to directly prepare your kids for it. You have to arm them. You have to protect, you have to tell them what the world wants to do. Now, you don't have to strike an irrational fear. You don't have to give them a complex. You don't have to set them up for paranoia, but you just have to say, listen, you might find yourself in situations where people are trying to make you feel bad for who you are. They're trying to make you feel bad for being white. Don't ever allow it. Don't ever let them make you feel that way. Stick up for yourself. Remember who you are inside your head. And you need to, and you like, you know, your own children, you know how to unlock this stuff. Maybe it's going on in school. You don't know about it. You want to ask them questions. Always ask those questions to find out what's going on at school. Arm them, tell them, talk to them about the word racist, racism, and tell them that they may be called that for no good reason. Just prepare them for these things. But more than that, I kind of show them kids learn best when they don't know they're being taught.
Right. And adults.
And if you need to set a tone, you need to carry yourself in a certain way. And you need to, I gave some advice to one of the moms and said, let your daughter see you handle these situations. Pull up a video online that's, you know, watchable for a 9-year-old girl, but kind of sound your reaction out. Let her just be in the area as you mock it or analyze it or ridicule it or sound out the way you want your daughter, your son, whatever the situation is, the way you want them to handle it. Pull up a video, and almost like it's a football locker room and you're watching the game tape, go over it, but present it almost like you're doing it for yourself, but just kind of teach them by proximity and set that example. And the only other thing I'll add to all of that is, like, speaking from my life, my personal experience as a child growing up, I always knew who I was because I had a father who knew who he was. I knew where I was from. I knew my ancestry, my lineage, bloodlines, whatever you want to call it. I knew my place in the world, and I had a sense of my own history. That is what identities are built on. That is what children seek. They need a foundation for their own existence. This is why you see such bad outcomes with single parent households, fatherless children, and all the like. They're robbed of so many of those foundations. So the best thing you can do is foundationally, from the day they're born, you tell them the narratives of your bloodlines, of the lands that you came from. Attach them to all of those things, because if you can instill in them a sense of themselves, if they know who they are, it's a lot harder for other people to turn them into someone they're not.
Yeah. Well done. This is a really, really good time for the gatekeepers here who are trying to say that critical race theory is not anti-white, it's a good time for them to really absorb the damage and pain that they're causing so many children. Is that really what they want to do? Is that really something they want to be a part of? They need to contemplate that. They need to really, really compassionately open their hearts and think about the amazing damage, the profound damage that they're doing to these children. It's really unspeakable. So, Brent, what are some of your responses or some of your experiences that relate to this topic?
Well, I wasn't in administration, so I didn't have as many kids, running in and out of the room that I was in. I have seen it firsthand. I've experienced it firsthand. And sometimes in class where I would have a kid say, hey, is such and such racist, or is that racist? Especially with high school kids, sometimes they'd be half joking. And I would kind of jump on them a little bit and say, don't ever use that R word. That R word for white people is like using the N word for black people. It's just meant to hurt white people. Like, don't use that word.
Well done.
And it kind of makes sense to them. It surprises them, of course, because they don't hear that from teachers normally. And also what the dude was talking about there with knowing who you are, knowing your bloodlines, knowing your people, having a strong mother, a strong father, that's setting up a foundation. And if the foundation is strong, it doesn't matter how many attacks come along, you're not going to push that kid off of their foundation. It's going to bounce off of them. Or they could just have autism like me when I was growing up. And when people would say something dumb, I'd say, I don't care what you have to say. Like, that doesn't matter. But most of our people don't have autism, unfortunately. So you've got to figure out how to teach them how to deal with this. Right. Now, some of these examples, like this post that was sent to Daniel, these kids weren't ready for this because the parents didn't know what was going on.
Sure.
Okay, we've been baking in this for decades, and it's getting progressively worse and worse. The whole boiling the frog, and now it's getting pretty damn hot in there. So, what you got to do with the kids is like psychological triage. They've been traumatized. They've been psychologically abused. It wasn't like they were held downstairs for 14 weeks and it puts the lotion on its skin and then the police pull them out. But they get this all the time. They get it all the time. And when we watch, I think if you show that video later on, at Arizona State, you see this is what it comes to. And not only does it come to that, it comes to all those videos, these hundreds of videos that you see with non-whites just beating the hell out of one white person. Sure. And it's not just that, but it's all the other white people standing around just watching.
Yeah.
Because they've been taught to put their defenses down and do nothing. So it's intentional psychological abuse that comes from so many directions all at the same time. If you can set the foundation for a child early on, that's the best thing. But if you haven't done that, then you've got to take that child in and you've got to teach them why this is happening. Here's the words that they're going to call you. This is why they call you that. This is how you can react to it. And like what Daniel said, set an example for your kid. If you're not out having to deal with that, play some videos that's appropriate for the kids and let them see what you're doing. Kids love to model people that they look up to, and they'll learn from you. Like you said, even though you're not saying, okay, Sally and Johnny, let's sit down and look what happens to kids like you when they get smacked around. No, they'll pick it up.
And for people who are new to this show, all three of us are teachers. We're in the education field. I did leave the profession and went freelance art, but I've got 15 years experience. So this is kind of a special niche that we're creating here. And if other educators would like to reach out to us, parents, you can obviously leave comments below. You're going to want to subscribe to this, etc. And please get the word out on this whole thing. But yeah, it's interesting how an aspect of this whole thing is parenthood, and what lack of resources parents have for coping with this information. This is why I'm doing this show, is to produce resources so that parents can have somebody to listen to and follow the lead in some sense. So speaking of which, Daniel did speak at a local school board meeting, and we're gonna take a listen to that clip and then go from there. So let's do a quick look at that.
My name is Daniel Concan. I'm a resident of this city. I grew up here, graduated here. I'm here to provide clarity on the word games being played around critical race theory. It may once have been a body of legal scholarship, but things change. For example, men can now get pregnant. So like it or not, critical race theory has become the recognized term for all the pseudo-academic dehumanizing of white people. It might be called white privilege, whiteness studies, anti-racism, diversity, equity, and inclusion. The list goes on. It's all understood as critical race theory. So just because there's no curriculum binder labeled critical race theory doesn't mean it's not in the schools. You can label it with any pretty words you like, as you do with your diversity and inclusion task force. But all they amount to are pretty lies. They serve as nothing but rainbow lipstick on a pig, and that pig's name is anti-white. You can try to deny that until the cows come home, but the anti-white pig has left the barn. Just because students aren't opening books called critical race theory doesn't mean it's not there, and doesn't mean that the anti-white staff training your task force conducts doesn't bleed through. And when it bleeds through, it results in white children becoming objects of hate. I've seen it with my own eyes working in schools. Speaking of eyes, regarding the anti-white training for district staff here, Superintendent Tucker said, quote, "It was to help see what the world is like through the eyes of a black child." Question: has anyone stopped and asked what the world looks like through the eyes of a white American child right now, born into a world that loathes and dehumanizes them, pathologizes their existence, and commands their self-loathing? White privilege, white rage, white fragility, abolish whiteness. The ubiquitous anti-white hate in our culture is grotesque. Passing this hatred on to our children is evil. It is anti-white psychological abuse. It must end. Stop convincing yourselves that you're morally righteous for giving into programming developed by people that hate you. Don't be complicit in anti-white hate. Get rid of your white people police diversity task force. Disengage from social engineering and just focus on actual education. Act more like a school district and less like the Frankfurt School. My name is
And less like the Frankfurt School. A lot of people responded to that saying, I doubt they even know what the Frankfurt School is, but bravo for starters. Everybody in the chat right now is just cheering. They're really pleased with what you're doing. And there's actually many parents across the United States going through exactly this, maybe not expressing it as eloquently as you, not expressing it with the knowledge that you have about what it really is. They're confused. Why are you treating my child like this? What are you doing? But could you expand a little bit on the context of the video and what the response was of the board?
Yeah. So as far as the board goes, now this is not, just to clarify, a lot of people are aware that I resigned in grand fashion from, that was a different school district.
Okay.
So this was given to a local school district. This is not the district from where I resigned. I don't reside in the town that I work.
Okay.
But the board, the meetings are set up such that there's no give or take. There's no interaction. It's a public forum. You can come up and speak, but the people up there are not going to, you can ask them, what time is it? And they're not going to tell you.
Oh.
That's kind of the setup. So it's speak your piece. They keep time, on to the next. They're going to keep doing what they're doing. So the reality is it's less for them. It's more for the normal people, because there's a lot of people in this very district and all over who show up at the school board meetings armed with the lame, ineffective narratives they've been provided by the think tanks, by conservatism, by PragerU, by whoever it is, right? And what those outfits do is they arm you with garbage narratives. They're professionally ineffective, and they set you up to go out and be ineffective yourself. Mm-hmm. That's the operation. And so I watch these speeches, I watch these school board meetings, and I watch good people. I got a little bit twisted up. It was a few weeks ago. I watched a guy in that same room just a good old boy, big dude,
Mhm.
came over. Son graduated a long time ago, lives up the street from the school, kind of caught on to the CRT thing lately,
Mhm.
looked at it. And this guy, you know, he's not a public speaker. He was just a genuine good guy that wanted to go say something when he saw something wrong, but he didn't know what to say because he's been shown such poor examples of what to say. So he's echoing weakness, even though he has the fight inside of him.
Mhm.
And I watch that stuff and I'm inspired by the intent, but I find it agonizing that they can't articulate anything effective because
Right.
no one else will articulate anything effective.
Mhm.
So that's why what I set out to do is to just tell the truth. I'm out here talking from my gut, trying to reach your gut, because when people hear the truth, they recognize it, they understand it. When we walked out of that room, the people that were in there, we ended up out in the hallway for half the night. They were jacked up. They were ready to go. And these are people that are there meeting after meeting, fighting the same fight, but fighting it with Republican talking points, fighting it with cable news talking points.
Mhm.
And when you tell the truth, they're ready to go. And the only thing that ends up getting in the way once you've told them the truth is then when they turn that podcast back on, or they turn that channel back on, or they listen to their favorite anti-critical race theory authority, and that person says, no, don't you listen to the bad men who admit that they're white and they don't hate themselves are scary and nasty and mean, and tisk, you can't do that. Go back to calling it state-sanctioned racism right away.
Mhm.
Those are the people that get in the way. Those are the people that need to be out of the way so that the truth can come out.
Yeah, it's so weak. It's, you bring up a fabulous point here about how people are given kind of faulty, I don't know how to put it exactly, that they're weakened in a sense. They're not able to go into this discussion with anything that's based on truth, that, like you said, the talking points. And that's the gatekeeper's job. That's what they're paid to do. Think about how much money is behind the gatekeepers, traveling around the country and getting on all kinds of news shows and selling their books. And, they're celebrities in a way, yet not one of them will say the truth that critical race theory is anti-white, and then open up that rabbit hole of why is it and what's it about and what does it, why are whites being targeted for extinction and who's behind it? And it opens up, it really pulls back the whole curtain and don't pay any attention to the man behind the curtain. Look over at the mighty Oz will tell you what to do. All that kind of. So I'm really feeling like there has to be more media out there. Anybody in the audience or people who come across this video, if you want more information, reach out to us for certain, but there's so many other resources. It's just a matter of wanting to know the truth. The truth is, in the age of information, ignorance is a choice. Come on. So that's the scary thing, though, is you've got so many gatekeepers, people that have drank the Kool-Aid, and they say, oh, well, what kind of sources are you looking at? Because CNN told me A, B, C, D, F, G. And yeah. And so you try to explain, well, look who owns, anyway, you know the argument. Anyway, let me pass the mic to Brent. What were some of your reactions to the video? And
well, first of all, I had to say congratulations for keeping it under 3 minutes. I understand like the open comment time that Daniel's talking about. You can stand up. You got, in my district, you got 3 minutes. The board just stares at you. They don't say anything. You don't know if they were sleeping with their eyes open by the time you get done talking, and hopefully something, went in there. But like Daniel said, there's maybe 8 people on the board, but how many thousands and thousands of people are going to hear this? And there's like 1,000 things in my mind as I'm watching something like this. And Donald, also your comments, because they say, oh, well, I like what he said, but CNN says such and such. And our society, especially American society, we live in a world of entertainment. We watch sports, we watch the movies, the TV shows, the streams that we see, CNN, MSNBC, Fox, all this, even though it's, quote, the news, it's still a form of entertainment. And so how do you break people out of this? I don't know if there's any type of magic formula, but I think that we're slowly making advances, because you can have like giant pile of bullshit, but if you put a little bit of truth in there, once they see that little bit of truth, they say, oh, maybe there's some more truth in there. And if they're curious and if they have integrity, they're going to start moving towards that. And also, one of the things that people haven't seen is some white people that they know who they are, they have integrity, they have intelligence, they are not ashamed of being white, they're proud to be white. They don't hate anyone. We want to protect our own race. And someone like Daniel stands up and actually talks, and he's not cowering and he's not apologizing for it. And like he says, I'll be white in your face. They don't exactly know what to do with that. It's like, well, what? That's not in the instruction book. What do we do now? We just have to keep the pressure on. Things will come our way when they see who has integrity and who's telling the truth.
Well done. So we're going to segue into this topic about how whites can cope with essentially anti-white racism. I don't know. A lot of people say don't use the word racism. I'm anti-whiteism. Let's just call it that. And so we're going to look at some news that happened this week. Maybe Brant can set this clip up a little bit while I get the video going. The black students harassed white students in a library.
I'll just tell you what I know. I only saw it one time. It's in I guess it's called the Multicultural Center at ASU in Tempe, Arizona. And two white kids are sitting there. They're doing their work. And one of the kids has a sticker on his laptop that says "Police Matter," I believe.
Police lives matter, maybe.
Or I don't know. I think it just says "Police Matter." I'm not sure. And then you can see the two kind of more darker skinned, I guess not white girls
Bodies of color. Bodies of color, sir.
Yes.
It does say "Police lives matter," by the way.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Pointing that out, but go ahead.
Yeah, I only see the color white, so it wasn't white there, so I couldn't see it. So of course they're being oppressed immediately. And I guess I don't need to say any more than that, but just the ridiculous of this is the result of all of these decades of this anti-whiteism, to use that term, both inside of school and everywhere else in society, that's been constantly pushed. And you see this kind of weird, like upside down, dysfunctional conversation and attack going on.
Yeah. I have to say, with my experience working in essentially for people of color in poor neighborhoods in the school districts, there's a certain type of street behavior. And again, it's a generalization. It's not 100% true, but it's probably 80% true. And so I'll just kind of lay that out. In my experience working with this particular demographic, there is a whole system of behavior, of terms and cues, and essentially the way people behave to start fights. There's this constant need to fight with each other. It's I think that, that opens up a giant can of worms about, well, why are they like that? Do they grow up in abusive homes? Is it the media? Black privilege? I mean, you can just go on and on. It's definitely the topic of a whole show or 100 different shows, right? So, but the problem is it exists and it needs to be addressed. So a lot of these students of color, they have this kind of what I would call a street culture or a culture of cruelty, where they go in at each other and it's they'll attack you on some premise, which would be no premise at all. Like, why did you look at me like that, for example, or I heard what you said about me, or just any kind of thing to start an argument. And then when you try to defend yourself against something you didn't do, something you're innocent of, you look like you're the bad guy for starters. And then it becomes, well, if I yell louder than you speak, I'm more right than you. So there's this kind of sonic boom where you're being, you know, and then other people come in and they start to gang up and circle around you. And the end result normally is a fist fight of some kind. And I think anybody who has the internet knows, you know, there's just thousands of videos of these kind of kids fighting each other and stuff. So I just wanted to kind of preface that as I listen to the things they say, not only is it leftist talking points and jargon, it's also kind of a street culture type jargon where they always walk around everything. They never, there's no logic involved. It's always just about aggression. So it's that in itself, I feel, is like verbal abuse. Like
I just want to say, Donald, that I would like to officially object to you describing your lived experience as a white man. That is invalid. So you don't get to do that.
I don't get to do that because I'm white, right? So my experience and all whites are invalid, correct? Is that true according to CRT?
I'm just trying to stick to the rules here. That's
yeah. I mean, hey, you know, I don't make the rules. I just have to enforce them, right? That's how it works?
Yes, sir.
All right, so let's. This is a little painful to get through, but we'll kind of walk through some of this video if it decides to appear on my screen. Let me.
It's being oppressed.
Yeah, even the video is being oppressed. That's weird. Oh no, I'm sorry. I'm being foolish. I got to hit the certain button here. Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
What did I do wrong?
You have a better. You're offensive.
Police lives matter?
You have the same stick. We're just trying to do school.
What?
He says you have the same sticker right off the bat. You know, like it's probably like a school. Who knows what? But like it's I can have it, but you can't. I mean, you're beginning to see how illogical this is.
But this is our space.
We've got a police lives matter sticker and we're getting kicked out. Can't do school.
Nobody's thinking that.
Yeah, you just said we have to leave.
The guy has a did not vote for Biden shirt. I wonder if that had anything to do with them being targeted.
Oh, I said
You're making the space uncomfortable.
But you're white. Do you understand what a multicultural space? It means you're not being centered.
White's not a culture?
no.
No, it's not a culture. It's white is not a culture. Say it again to the camera. You think whiteness is a culture?
This is insane.
So anyways, this is the violence that ASU does, and this is the type of people that they protect. Okay, this white man thinks he can take up our space, and this is why we need a multicultural space, because they think they can get away with this shit.
I'm gonna sit here the whole time and you can find somebody to kick me out.
That's cool. We will.
Kicking you out. We're asking you to leave if you have any consideration for people.
We're not kicking you out. We're asking you to leave. I mean, there's all kinds of like anti-logical things that are pouring out of her mouth. You know, like this is a multicultural space. Well, then all cultures should be there, right? But it's said in a tone that's very aggressive. And that sends the wrong signal to the mind. You can't logic with people who are sort of like aggressively yelling at you. And that's part of the street culture. You see, they don't want an answer. They don't want to resolve the problem. They want to fight you. And this is something that whites are totally not equipped to handle. And you can look at their faces. They're completely confused. Now, the one guy with the camera obviously knows a scam is going on.
People of color and our marginalized
That I can go?
Yeah, the whole rest of the campus, the second floor, the first floor, the whole MU, every single part of the campus centers you. This is the only space that you're not centered, and you're still trying to center yourself, which is peak white cis male bullshit.
You're not.
You are racist. Your sticker is racist because police, that's a job. You can choose to be a police. I don't choose to be black. Okay? No, you can choose to be a cop. You can choose to kill people with a badge, and you're protecting that shit, which means that you're racist.
I choose to be black.
Right.
I know, but
This is
offensive.
exactly my point. Like, how do you follow the logic of that? You know, you can choose to be a cop. You can choose to kill people with a badge. Therefore, you're racist. That means that what that is bicycle plus submarine equals chocolate pie. It makes no damn sense at all. Like, she's just freaking out at him. And the poor kid is like, how do I deal with this? I'm just trying to do my work here, you know? Like, he's being punished for existing, you know? Anyway, we can carry on.
Automatically, because these people kill people like me and like us, right? So you're promoting our murderers. So please just don't do that.
Thank you. Thank you.
So why should that bother you?
Because do you understand that police lives matter was in response to Black Lives Matter?
I pay the same fucking tuition as you.
Yep.
Hold on, but
Yeah, that's fine. And you have everywhere. You have.
I'm working 60 hours a week while going to school because my parents don't just give me money.
It doesn't
Okay, it doesn't matter. You have a second floor.
My skin doesn't
Bullshit.
matter.
Who are you? I don't care about what color your skin is.
You can get out of here if you're going to be yelling at people because
There's
they're
no-
trying.
You are safe.
We need a fucking space.
You can get out of here if you're yelling at people. You know, it's like, we can yell at you, but you can't yell at us, you know? Like, I mean, it's maddening. And I'm telling you, this goes on all day, every day in every school that is on across the tracks. And try to imagine being a teacher in a classroom trying to stop this from happening all day long while trying to teach people things. Anyway, it's off the charts.
We have to work for 5 years
Yes,
to
we
make
did.
this
We
space.
worked for 5 years for ASU to build a multi.
Yeah.
space.
This was
like white supremacist, like narrative
We're
about like police lives matter is saying.
Yeah, it is. Yes, it is. Yeah, it's affiliated with white nationalists.
It is.
They're just
It is
sitting here
affiliated
to
with a lot of-
study, and
it
you
is.
guys went out of your way to inconvenience.
Yeah.
them.
Because this
No.
Yeah, because this is our space. We fought for this shit for 5 years, since 2016. You have no idea about the labor that was created to create this space and his.
They're not here to cause
So we're saying you're
No, no, we can't. You're violent, dude.
We're saying you're
Yeah, fuck America, bro. America was created on genocide and slavery. Look at his face. Obviously, never.
That is the point. That is old.
Yeah, and the point is that studying. This is not a space just for studying. This is a space for multiculturalism.
Kill black people. We need to defund and defast in our.
One nation under God with genocide and slavery for all.
It's like, no, you notice how both of them are yelling at the same time. So it's a cacophony of insanity. And that's we've entered into like phase 3 of we're gonna start physically abusing you, you know, and then, you know, how close are we until that, right? If there were even more people around, I had people of color around them at the time that believed in that same kind of leftist ideology, because obviously not all people of color do, then, you know, this would have, I mean, they would have been on the floor, punches flying and all the whole. So there's a lot of the video. I'm not so sure we want to watch the whole thing. It just proves the point. I think we've kind of got the point so far, you know, but Brent, what are your reactions to this? How is this happening in colleges today?
Well, it's happening all over the place. It's just that these people are big enough and autonomous enough, and they don't live with mommy and daddy now. And they've been told how horribly they've been oppressed. And so now they're going to, you know, take it out on these tormentors that are daring to sit down there. So what I want to say is there's no way to argue with the crazy person, especially someone like this. And like you said, if there were a larger group of non-whites, fists would be thrown at this point. We've seen it so many times. So like what Jason Kuna talks about, this is you're in the anti-white narrative once this bullshit kicks off. You cannot argue inside the anti-white narrative. You can say what you're saying is anti-white. You're only saying this to me because I'm white. Why are you anti-white? Explain to me right now why you're anti-white. That's all I care about. Like, I don't want to hear the rest of your bullshit. Why are you anti-white? Now, you can decide if you're going to stay there and put up with that crap, film them, call the campus police. If you're going to leave, whatever you're going to do, okay? But don't ever apologize to these assholes, because they'll just, you know, it's like sharks with blood in the water. They just go harder and harder and harder. But you cannot argue inside the anti-white narrative. It's not worth it.
I mean, there's almost no narrative happening there. It's just all this madness and historic jargon, and nothing makes sense. It, like I said, it's all just abuse. Daniel, what's your take on this whole thing?
So there's two levels I want to hit on. There's the in the room level, and then there's kind of the larger picture. In the room, it starts off bad because the very first thing that happens is the Police Live sticker guy looks up like a deer in headlights and says, "What did I do wrong?"
Yeah, right.
Now, I don't want to go hard on those guys because the world has set them up to fail in that situation. But yeah, that's not going to cut it. If you don't have if you're not prepared to engage verbally with those lovely ladies, my suggestion, and the guy short shorts across the table, my guy there almost did it. He began to strike a posture at one point that if his buddy across the table had struck the same posture, it's what I call be defiantly white. You don't have to say a word. Kick back, fold your arms, look at them and smile, and listen to them squeal. Listen to that. You're going to have to clean the brains off of you when their heads explode. If you just sit there and be defiantly white. Who cares what these weaponized maniacs have to say? Who cares what they think about you? Don't give ground. Don't engage if you're not prepared to engage, which these guys obviously aren't prepared to engage. And it's disheartening because these guys both end up being chased out of there. They give the ground, they hit the bricks, and every freak parade organization on that, like in the fallout of it, of course, all of the official statements start coming out from like the weird affiliated organizations of this, that, and the other special interest thing. Of course, all condemning the two white guys for existing.
Sure.
You can't exist if bodies of color tell you not to. How dare you?
All right.
But and Brant hit on this earlier. What you're watching here, this is such a valuable piece of footage. I want everybody in the world to watch that video start to finish, because that is a real world manifestation of critical race theory. You just watched it. It's not anti-black, anti-brown, anti this, that, or the other thing. It's explicitly anti-white. It sets white people up for attack, and it weaponizes others against them. Those kids completely unprepared. They've spent a lifetime being pathologized, having white guilt heaped upon them. They have white rage, they're white fragility, all of that horse shit.
Yeah.
This is what they've been set up for. And then the girls who are attacking them have been set up with all of the literal insanity that's coming out of their mouth. You're doing violence. You're doing violence to us.
Yeah, right.
But they have these they've never had an original thought in their life. They're completely unthinking. They have been provided these attack narratives.
Yeah.
And they go out,
attack robots.
Out they go into the world. Automaton. It's scary. But on every conceivable level. And that's why it's hard for me to go hard on those guys, because it's like, parents, this is why you need to prepare your children. I spent the last 7 years of my life dealing with the elementary school version of that white guy that was scared to death.
Yeah. It was the high school version. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is college. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, is think about, if this is if critical race theory is allowed to manifest and root in our schools, the children of today are going to be this kid tomorrow, right, in the future, but far worse, far worse. It's actually unimaginable how bad it could be. And I do want to quickly just interject that, we've seen countless videos of white leftists with the same talking points, the same kind of argumentative wackadoo attacks on just like normies or patriots or right-wing guys or anybody that's not them, essentially, to thought police them into behaving, So it's heavy stuff. It's ugly. It's very, very ugly. And honestly, I think that these two girls, their behavior throws gasoline on the fire of racism. A bystander who has no idea what's going on and is not educated on Marxist theory, cultural Marxism, critical race theory, they're going to see this person's attacking that other person and they're crazy. And so the more they see of that behavior, guess what? They're going to become racist towards those people because they see a tendency in that type of behavior, which you see that. So that's the twisted thing of this whole thing, is it actually creates more racism rather than like dousing it, and putting that fire out. I don't know, it's just the world that we're living in is madness. But there you go. That's divide and conquer. That's the leftist goal there. Brent, do you have any interjections here? What do you think?
Oh, well, I just wanted a little bit of a clarification. When you said that it causes more racism, are you talking about the stereotypical racism that whites are supposed to feel towards non-whites?
Well, I think racism, I would say, is the generalization of any race of people, that they're all this way, and that way is not a good way. It's a bad way. It's a certain type of a behavior.
Oh, so it's solidifying prejudice then?
Yeah, there you go. You could put it that way better.
Well, yeah, I totally agree. And you could say prejudice, but people that have lived around other races, they're not prejudiced. It's post-judiced. You just have pattern recognition. And when you have this pattern that you've seen, you have 4 billion examples, and then you have 4 billion in one example. Yeah, it's going to solidify it a little bit more. So yeah, this is just going to continue. The anti-whites are going to continue to grow and scream their heads off and their brains explode. And they're going to continue to gather more institutional power. And people that care about white well-being, that's going to continue to grow as well. So both of these, if you want to call them movements, they're not movements, but they're both gaining momentum simultaneously.
Right. It's a kind of a cultural phenomenon in a sense. So having looked at all this stuff, let's start thinking about solutions. That's one of the goals of this show, is to directly put a spotlight on the problem and then say what could be done about this. Now, Brent Danger has School of the West world, and we're going to jump over there a bit and look at some of that. There's a specific page that we're going to have a peek at. So what is your curriculum, Brent, as far as going free and white well-being?
Okay. Well, what I'm doing is I'm taking the terminology and the strategy that Jason Kuna has come up with over time and trying to distill out what can be taught to children when they're young, because people that are teachers, you realize that you have got to meet the student wherever they are. And most adults, they can't even begin to wrap their heads around what's going on. And they, like I said in the stream last time, they know nothing of history as well. So you think, holy crap. I mean, you can't even get this through to most adults. How are you going to get through to kids? So you think, what is the most salient points? And because I've spent enough time around little kids, I tend to think in small little words and analogies and examples. So on this page right here, I've got 2 foundational videos. So the reason I was thinking about this today is because of what I've heard Daniel talk about on the stream tonight and also previously, and that we need to do a couple of things. We need to show our children how they are connected to their ancestors and how we are one people around the planet. And also, we need to prepare the children for the abuse that they're going to get. So like I think I said this before, remember, school is to prepare children. Okay. So if you've got white children now, not only do you have to teach them how to read and write and add, you have to teach them the type of propaganda that's going to be slamming up against them, so that when you're in this study hall at the university and two cream-colored girls come up to you and they start screaming at you, it doesn't have any effect. Okay, you don't give a rat's ass. You're not putting up with that.
Right.
So if you are solid, then you understand that. So those two videos right there, the first one is, sorry, can you scroll back down?
Yes, and actually I'm going to have to come back in to play it with audio, but let's.
Okay, well, we don't have to play it. If we have time, sure, that's fine. But the first one, the introduction to Going Free. So you can think of Going Free as going free from the anti-white propaganda. So what I do in there is I show an example of a child in school and how they're treated. And it's not from a specific example that I know of, but it's kind of like an amalgam of many examples put together. And at the end of the video, this white child that's been victimized, a new child comes into the school that's not going to be victimized and serves as a role model for the other white child. And so you see, this is how you're victimized, and this is how you can refuse to be victimized. And then the second one there, the meaning of biospirit. I think biospirit is an extremely important word. I didn't like it when I first heard it because I thought biospirit, it sounds kind of weird. It sounds like I'm going to use some crystals and stuff like that. But what it refers to is like the inherent genetic instincts of the different races and how the different races continue to manifest what they are in physical structures and the way they develop society. A real fast example of that, you can put some white people on an island and you get Iceland. You put just black people on an island, you get Haiti. Why is that? We're all equal. How did that happen? Well, everyone has a different biospirit. And when you take people with different biospirits and you try and smash them together, it doesn't work. Doesn't matter how many times you talk about equality and inclusion and all this type of crap, it doesn't work. So I think that's a foundation that people have to understand. You got to build that foundation first, and then all this other crap, it doesn't matter how many different words you're being centered and you're being violent in your short shorts and all this type of shit. Like it doesn't matter anymore. So this is about building the foundation for our children.
Wow, that's awesome. The biospirit is absolutely central to our whole movement and our whole message. What you just said about, Iceland versus Haiti, diversity plus proximity equals war. This is something that is known. It's a simple fact. It's just a simple fact. And so diversity is essentially war on whites. And it is what it is. I mean, obviously cultures can have 5% diversity or something like that, and that's fine, but not 40%. That's going on and on. You get the general idea. How about the Western Kids Going Free?
Yeah, that's a page. That's a slideshow. You can click on that. There's nothing that you have to get loaded up. So what this is one of our people that's done work with Jason for quite a while. She put together a slideshow that's kind of like an introductory show that has major concepts in like the idea of going free or white well-being, if you'd like to call it that. And the very first slide on there, I believe it says, basically, you can never apologize for something that you've never done. Atonement cannot be made for a grievance never committed. Meaning that what you got to understand as a white person is it doesn't matter how many times you apologize, it's never going to be enough because you didn't actually do anything to these other people. But they're going to keep demanding that you apologize to them all the time, that you give them things. Now, why do they do that? Well, if you get down to it and you tell the truth, they're jealous of what we have. And that just rubs them the wrong way. And they've been told that it's okay to act this way over and over and over. And whites have been demonized at the same time. So you have this, this aggressor and this victim mentality that's set up in these races here. So
I'm going to jump on
through that.
Yeah, give me just a second here because it wasn't, it opens up in a second window and then StreamYard doesn't show it. So let me come back in. And who helped out with the slideshow?
That was Althea Promethea put that together.
And she's a great person in our community, by the way. So I think she works a lot like promoting Jason's ideas and etc.
Right.
So let's have a quick look at this. You guys can see it, yeah? So there you go. Atonement cannot be made for a grievance never committed. Now that Jason came up with that. Is that correct?
That's right.
What a fabulous concept that is. Yeah. I believe I did a little bit of artwork for him for one of his slideshows, but let's continue with this. Okay. The source of anti-white hatred is jealousy and envy. And I find that absolutely true. You know, it's interesting because I tend to think that the left's definition of white supremacy is actually not, it's the inability to compete and succeed in white societies. And instead of saying that, meaning we can't compete with you, or we can't build civilizations the way white people do, or maybe survive in them or thrive in them, instead of calling it that, no, it's the opposite. You think you're better than me. You're a white supremacist. And so in the case of like Haiti versus Iceland is kind of an example. I think that opens up a lot. Do you want to maybe just speak to that just a little bit, Brent?
Yeah. I don't teach that one race is better or worse than anything else. We're just different.
Of course.
And you've got to realize that it's a lie to say that everyone's the same. Now, think of this, for example. In school, they're always talking about closing that achievement gap, close that achievement gap. What can we do?
Exactly.
What kind of IEP, individualized instruction plan, can we do for this kid or this kid or this kid? We want them all up. Okay, we're always working to get these people up. And we got to have affirmative action. We got to discriminate against whites. Now, if you have a favorite football team or soccer team or basketball team, do you want a team like that? Hell no. You want the best players on the team.
Yeah.
People relate to reality. They get into reality when they talk about their sports or their entertainment, but they won't do that when they're talking about the races. Now, who did that and why they did that? That's a whole nother conversation. And that's for history. Sure. But one of the things that I also want to point out here is that part of setting that foundation for our people is control of language. All right. Mm-hmm. If you're trying to teach something new to people, you have to have the terminology to teach it. Okay. Mm-hmm. Just like when they invent computers, you got to have names for all the parts in there. You got to have names for the software. So Western kind, what that is, that's a term coined by Jason, that refers to the white race. Now, why Western kind? Why would we say that instead of just saying white people?
Sure.
Well, we are the people that develop Western civilization. Right. Without us, it does not exist. So if you take away Western kind, Western civilization is gone.
Yep.
So that's part of that conversation that we use. And you can even use it if you get involved talking to anti-whites. You can say, look, you're trying to get rid of white people. You're trying to get rid of the golden goose. Exactly. What do you think is going to happen if you try and get rid of us? Anyway, so we can control the language.
Let me just quickly pass the mic to Daniel. I wanted to ask you, how does equity, from the leftist CRT definition of the word, how does that play into what we're talking about now?
It's everything. That's why they took equality, which was always a lie, and when it didn't pan out the way they pretended it would pan out, they have finally discarded the word equality. They've replaced it with equity. And it's a joke. I mean, you can define it different ways. I define it as horse shit. But even in school, it's to.
We're going to need
the whole thing is through a racial lens. Like I could give the analogy of you're putting the slowest runner at the front of the race and telling everyone else they're not allowed to pass.
Right.
The analogy holds, except in the reality of the world we face, there's also the purely racial application of it, where it's everybody is going to be put in front of the white people and the white people are required to stay behind them, even though we're all competing. No, we're not. You're telling us we're not allowed to.
Right. Because slavery. Which we ended, by the way, but forget about that. Anyway, that's a whole other topic. Well, let's go back to the slideshow and let Brent walk us through a little bit here. Make sure that we're looking at this the right. Here we go. Meme pathogen. This term has always been slightly confusing to me. I know what memes are. I know what pathogens are. So these are essentially infectious ideas. Is that what that means?
Yeah, that's the way Jason explains it. Now, when I start teaching this, when I have exclusive white well-being classes that I teach for kids, I'm not going to start off with the term meme pathogen. I think that's way too confusing.
Sure.
Yeah. What I'll do is I can talk about it as like it's bad thoughts or something like that. It's this propaganda that that we just live in all the time, like fish inside of water. And so these thoughts that you hear all the time, and it gets inside your head. And then what Althea is showing right here is part of the advertising, if you will, that kids see all the time. For example, on the left right here, like, oh, look, I know how to tell time. Are we telling time, or are we learning that white girls should be girlfriends with black boys? What are we learning here?
Right, exactly.
Same thing in the middle. And then over here on the right side, people are strong and healthy except for the white boy. He's in a wheelchair. He's a weak piece of crap. So if you're a girl, you don't want to marry someone like that.
Right.
You want to get one of those black boys.
I could go off like for hours on that. I mean, I cannot stand. It's ubiquitous. You can't go anywhere now without seeing anti-white meme pathogens like subtly slipped into everything. It's weird. It's surreal how 10 years ago it didn't exist, and now it's everywhere.
It's the continuation of their perfection of the inversion of reality. They've come up with this word marginalization,
right,
and they roll it out as though that is what whites have done to them, while they are on, like you said, a ubiquitous campaign of marginalizing white people out of existence in the civilization that they built.
In our own civilization. I know. It's infuriating on many levels. And I often try to make the analogy of, for example, China and Tibet. So Tibet is an extremely precious culture, precious in many ways, but communist China invaded it, took over, and is, in a sense, genociding Tibet almost completely by now. And the Tibetan people have had to spread out across the world, and etc. So there's, in a sense, no more Tibet in the true sense of the word. So that's what's, if whites go, we take our civilization with us, and then I flip that around and I say, imagine if whites created, where we kept all of our technology, science, medicine, everything, our whole civilization just to ourselves. Then the rest of the world would still be, living in mud huts and riding horses, or even that. I don't know if they would do. You'd see that we created the modern world. If you destroy us, what's going to happen to the world? You see. So anyway, these are things that I contemplate. But let's carry on with the slideshow. Forced multiracial friendships and relationships inflict harm on harm of white erasure. Brent?
I think this is more of the same. I'm not quite sure what we're looking at in the middle there. I think this is,
a little
I don't know, black and white zombies. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I know the photo's a little odd. Teenagers and young adults, non-whites portrayed as intelligent and helpful, kind and sympathetic, friendly and funny. Every other TV commercial is exactly that. And I mean, if anyone has a TV, these things are super obvious, right? Yeah.
Also, I want to say that this is from the White Wellbeing page for youth. There's also a White Wellbeing page for teens/adults. And a lot of these concepts right here, I have links to some of Devin Sachs' videos, and I'll have links to other videos as well. And also one of our guys has put together a series of propaganda, what is propaganda videos, so people can start to see, when you see this is propaganda, and this is why it's propaganda. And as you start to understand that, you can see that all around you. It's like one of the lessons that you're supposed to teach kids in the English class is that as we're reading this passage, kids, is this a fact or is this an opinion? Because when kids start off reading, they don't know the difference. We start off in a fantasy world and we slowly move out of that. But we've got this, infantilization of our culture now, where people don't know what the hell is going on. They don't know when they're being fed propaganda. So the reason that I brought that up is because I've got material here that's for the younger kids, and this will get developed. And this is the free material on the site. Next week, I'm starting the elementary math and reading lessons. And as I develop like a White Wellbeing class, I'll put that in there as well, science and other things. So anyway, this is some of the free material. And as I have time, I'll put more free material on there as well. So this is at least a starting point for parents to go to and think, well, I haven't really thought about this. I'll, review this, show this to my kid, discuss it with them. And this is kind of like a jumping off point to to study this further and see, how does this help us? How does this give us the thought chains and the vocabulary to express what is happening to us?
Beautiful, beautiful. Schoolofthewest.world. Schoolofthewest.world. That's for people who would like to use this resource, and it's a developing and ongoing resource. I want to reach out and help Brent with the art curriculum for that. That's something we have to get to. But I think just being able to have the eyes to see that propaganda, for starters, is a really important literacy, a cultural literacy that whites must have, and that we should talk about it openly, publicly, and much, much, much more, in the sense to show, look at how this propaganda is depersoning us. It's dehumanizing us in a way. So let's, I think this really was a fabulous show, a lot of great topics we covered. Maybe any concluding thoughts? Let me pass the mic to Daniel.
Yeah, just kind of, I would say big message of the night is to parents. Prepare your kids, build a foundation, teach them who they are, prepare them for the world that is coming for them. And make no mistake about it. Where we're at right now, there is a world that is coming for them. You saw it in the video. They can be minding their business on their own college campus. It's coming for them. Just get used to telling the truth and setting an example and build those foundations. And the only other thing I'll add is it occurred to me as we went through the program tonight. I think the next thing I'm going to embark upon, the Multicultural Center at Arizona State University. I mean, I can just see it right now, the sign going up over the doors, the Brent Danger Multicultural Student Center. I think I'm going to lead the way on that.
Excellent. And so, Brent, any closing thoughts for the audience?
I think that what you're doing and what Daniel's doing is fantastic. It's great to see people start to stand up as more people, like I said earlier, as more people stand up and like, yeah, I'm a white person. Someone says, well, what is white? Well, you're looking at it, sweetheart, right here. Yeah. It will give permission to other people in their own minds to stand up as well. And I think that, things are going to flip back over eventually. Who knows what's going to be left by the time things flip back over and we can start to regain a foundation, a society which encompasses education and our own institutions. Who the hell knows? But we have to keep pressing forward.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yep. So schoolofthewest.world, also nowhiteguilt.org, whiteartcollective.com. And I often lead people to AmericanRenaissance.com first. I think that is an excellent starting point for people who don't know what's going on and want data. They want scientific, hard data that shows, here are the statistics, here's the truth, this is what's going on. It's not, it's in a way more academic in its style and flavor. It's not kind of like 20-year-olds being like shitlords on the internet kind of thing. So it's AmericanRenaissance.com is the starting point. And then you're going to learn about other people who appear on that show and in those conferences who produce more content about white well-being. But just searching the term white well-being should help you. So, but like I said, schoolofthewest.world is the great starting point for all parents. So I want to thank everybody in the audience who's joined us. As usual, you know the drill. This doesn't mean or do anything unless you share the heck out of it. We've given you the ammunition. Get out there and fight the culture war. That's why we're making this media, is to provide more enlightenment for whites to fight the anti-white machine that we're up against. It's a giant, giant global problem. So God bless you all. And thank you so much to Daniel Kunkanen, to Brent Danger. It's such a pleasure to be with you guys. You bring us so much energy and wit and intelligence to the overall movement. So thank you so much. And everybody have yourself a great night. Bye-bye.